Good evening, everyone. Today is June the 30th, 2026. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we come before you just saying thank you. Thank you for allowing us to see yet another day. We thank you, God, for your goodness, your mercy, and your grace. We ask you, God, that you will bless our broadcast on this evening, as well as the viewers and their families as well as my guests and hers. We just ask you, God, that you would take place, have your way in our conversation, and hopefully that it'll help enrich some people's lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Yo, what's good, everyone? Y'all come on in. Let me know what platform you guys are watching on, whether it be Facebook or YouTube, the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. It's free to subscribe. I appreciate it. Um, Happy Born Day to everybody that celebrated on this week. It's been so many people um, that had birthdays. I didn't even write the names down. So happy birthday to everybody that celebrated over this previous week. Um, and my mom, of course. My mom celebrated her born day on Wednesday. We gave her a shout out last week. But happy born day to my mom again. She had a wonderful birthday experience. Um, Congratulations again to all the graduates. We still got more people graduating and moving on from high school to college. So congratulations to all you guys, and best wishes to you. You and our thoughts and prayers as you endeavor on life's next journey for you. Um, Much success to you all. Uh, that's about it. As far as the intro, we're gonna get ready to get on into the show. Tonight, got a beautiful young lady on with us that I met through Facebook, I believe. Um,
Mhm.
we've been communicating back and forth. I would watch uh, I watched her page and some of her posts from throughout, and she really gained a special place in my heart during the time when she lost her mom, and I felt like I needed to reach out and connect with her. I've been praying for her ever since, and just a beautiful person. She's a realtor, um, and we're gonna get into it. But tonight, joining us is Miss Monica Boswell. How are you today, Monica?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for your prayers.
No problem at all. So tell the people a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Oh gosh. Just a girl. A girl mostly and a woman because I have to be. I'm a realtor, as you mentioned. My mother's daughter. We're originally from Louisiana and California,
Okay.
and now I live in North Carolina. I'm a mother, divorcee, and yeah, I probably experienced one of the greatest life alterations, life shifts last year when I lost my mom. But, this too shall pass. We all go through some things, and it's making me a better person, I think, even though I don't feel better without my mom, but I feel like I understand, I have more empathy, and I'm learning to, you know, woman on my own without my mom.
Yeah. And that, like you said, that could be challenging in itself. And it's crazy because we're gonna segue a little bit. Like I said in the pre-show announcement, today is the last Tuesday of the month of June. June is recognized now as Men's Mental Health Month. Um, so I kind of wanted to touch on that just a little bit. We didn't have anything pre-planned to discuss on this topic, but I felt led in my spirit to bring it up um, yesterday when I realized that this was the last Tuesday of the month for mental health. I think that is very important for men, women also, but particularly men, to be able to talk about their feelings, talk about what it is that they're going through. Um, it was crazy because I was watching a scene in particular, or in my mind I was watching this scene in particular in the movie Fences, and it just always baffled me. I'm a big sports guy. I like to watch like the Hall of Fame speech and the induction ceremonies all weekend in all the major sports. And one of the things that I've always taken away from watching that is it's crazy. It was always fascinating to me to see these big, strong men, um, you know, tough guys, and you know. them for them to be looked at as like these superheroes, something with in the athletic field, to get down on stage and break down, or you hear them in different conversations and say, they'll break down and start crying, talking about, saying things to the effect of, my dad never told me that he loved me, or different things of that nature there. And it's like, I'm glad we're living in a day and age where we've had a culture shift as opposed to men being open on more about their feelings and whatnot. Because back in the in the 50s and the 60s, especially as black men in particular, um, they had a more difficult time. You had to you, life was different to say the least during that era. So just be a man. Real men don't cry. You had all these different things. You didn't talk about how much you loved the person. And the scene that I was relating to was when Denzel's character, his son asked him, Dad, why don't you love me? And he said, Boy, I don't, it's not my responsibility to love you. My responsibility is to keep a roof over your head, to put food on the table, and all these different things there. And it's crazy the dynamics of how we all view life different as opposed to where things are supposed to be. But I'm here to say, it's definitely okay to get help. Um, Outside of just your pastor, there's nothing wrong with going to see a therapist. There's nothing wrong with going to see a psychologist. Get the help that you need, because we are human beings too. It doesn't matter your gender. It's very important that you get to talk and communicate these different things. I shared on the show, on previous shows, and it's not something that I'm proud of. It's not something that I'm not no longer uncomfortable about. But I'm a suicide attempt survivor myself, and one of the things that I need people to know is not that people don't always, because I knew I had people that loved me. I knew people that cared about me. I knew I had different avenues. I made the decision. I made a choice not to use those resources. So it's very important that, as men, it's okay to talk about our feelings. And one of the things that I seen pertaining to men's mental health, I was looking for different quotes and things to talk about tonight. One of the things that I came across was, um, it's okay to start over. And I just really feel like someone needs to know that, someone needs to hear that, someone needs to understand that. Is it difficult? Absolutely. Absolutely it's difficult to start over. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean that it can't be done. Um, it's very important. I need for every guy out there listening that's watching live or watch this in the future, I need you to know that you do matter. I don't care what life situations have thrown your way. I don't care whether you're divorced. I don't care whether you're childless, or you don't have any relationships, or you feel all alone. You still matter. You matter to someone. If no one else is physically, you matter to God. You matter to the higher power, the higher being, the creator of all. So know that, and seek help the best way that you could possibly get to. And if you really feel like you don't have anybody there major different, you could Google, you could look up different hotlines that you could call. And I always tell you guys, I'm an open book. If you don't really feel like you have anybody to talk to, you could always reach out to me. All my information is out there. You can leave your comment or reach out to me in the DMs or whatever the case may be. Um, but I'm here for you guys, and I really need to know that. I need for everyone to know that no one is walking this walk in life alone. It is very important that you guys understand that, because you, like I said, you matter. You matter, and it's important that even if you don't, even if you're not at a place now that you feel that way, get to that place. Get to that place, and because it is so amazing to me, because I understand the challenges of being a man, but it is so amazing to me when I actually started using those resources and talking to people that I feel like I could trust, and talking about what I was going through, how I felt, um, unapologetically, and not reserved, just being free and open. It was so amazing to me, the difference that it makes and how you feel afterwards. It is such a relief to, even if it's even if it's just sharing, and for the ladies out there, for the spouses, the girlfriends, whatever the case may be, I need you guys to understand something. And everything is not general speaking all the time, but one thing about men is when a man comes to you with the problem, or a man is talking to you about something, it does not necessarily mean that he's looking for you to help him come up with a solution. Allow that man the space to vent. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you suggesting or whatever the case may be, but we're not always coming to you guys with seeking help or problem solving, so to speak. Sometimes we just have to get it out of our system. But women, especially if you're loving and supporting, I'm not saying don't be supportive. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying a lot of times it could feel like that. Like if I come to you and tell you that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, well, this is what we got to do. I'm not asking if I want your advice, I will ask you for your advice. Or how do you feel, babe? What do you think? Something to that effect, whatever. But just because a man opened up to you don't mean that we necessarily need to go into problem solving mode. And a lot of times women, being the nurturers that they are, that automatically kicks in. And that might not be what's needed at that time. I don't know who that's for, but I just felt like I need to throw that little nugget out there before we moved on. Did you have anything that you wanted to add as far as men's mental health, Monica?
That message was for me. Women, we're comforters, and I know men are problem solvers also, but women, we just kind of want to like comfort the situation. And so um I think we're always trying to help pick the brains of the men in our lives, and get to the bottom line, and try to figure out more, and have more questions. But if that's a good message, it's like sometimes you guys just want to, just sound off. And so it helps for us to just be that sounding board where you can just dump sometimes. So
Yo, what's
yeah.
good, man? Thanks for tuning in, bro. Yeah. All right, so uh, let's get to it. You said that when we talked and I asked you to be on the show, you were saying that you were passionate about a few things in particular. Um, we're going to start with fatherless daughters. Like,
Oh my goodness.
what is the importance of that, or why are you so passionate about this particular subject?
Well, I come from a place of being a fatherless daughter, and I believe that a lot of women, even if they had a father in the household, they were probably raised as fatherless daughters. um, as I start to reconcile with a lot of the things that troubled me with between my mother and I think about her growing up, and for all intents and purposes, she had the perfect family unit. Mother, father, they've both had good jobs. They were considered middle class or upper middle class, and um, in a Black community in the South, that was saying a lot. Um, but her father wasn't present, and even though he was in the household, he wasn't present.
Mhm.
And I can say that openly now because she's no longer here. Please forgive me, mom. But he wasn't. And I think that she lived a life of filling in the blanks. Like you said earlier, how women, we try to answer those questions. She tried to fill in the blanks as to why he wasn't there, when the truth is he just wasn't there. You know, and then in my own situation, my biological father wasn't around, but I had a stepdad who was in my life for the most part. And he was a great stepdad. I mean, fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anybody better. He was a good influence. He loved my daughter. He loved my mother, and he loved me. And that was great. I'm really grateful for him in my life, because if it wasn't for his influence, I don't know if I would know north, south, east, or west when it comes to men. But I'm still a fatherless daughter.
Mhm.
And then my daughter, she grew up with her dad, who is a very lovely person, and she loves her father very, very much. But because of the relationship and the dynamic that her dad and I had, she did not have her dad around as much as she should. And she even told me this morning, if I could share, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this portion, but she said that, her dad travels a lot and she wishes he would come and see her. He goes to every state, but he doesn't come here. And so I think that men want to be providers, like Denzel said. They are providers. They provide a roof over our heads, and they go to work and they work really hard, and they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. Especially our brothers. They have so many. You guys have so much on your plate, just trying to show up in be accepted as equal to your counterparts. And I know that you guys carry a lot, but I think the one thing that is often missed, and maybe it's because you didn't ask to be a father, maybe that wasn't the role that you chose to be in, maybe the woman um, chose to have a child and didn't include you in on that. But whatever the case may be, however you came about being a father, I think dads, a lot of times they feel like, well, I provided the money, I've provided the resources, but the time is what a lot of daughters need. I cannot speak for sons. I will not speak for sons. I can only speak for daughters. And I know that the role of the father, especially in a Black woman's life, is critical. And it hurts my soul when I hear women and men going at each other about, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And just all this stuff that we're hearing today in 2026, that it's like we're at each other's throat. We are more each other's enemy than we love each other, it seems. And I can only imagine that it's because women have not been properly fathered. We don't know what to expect of men. We don't know what proper expectations are for when a man comes home from work. And does he want to talk? Does he want to hear all about our day? Does he want to be our girlfriend? Does he want to chat it up with us? Does he want a meal cooked? Is he okay if I'm working and I didn't cook a meal? There's a lot of relationship dynamics that women, especially women, Black women, are not privy to. Maybe we didn't grow up with a father in the household, or maybe it was an untraditional relationship. And so we romanticized what we thought a man should do. I call it the Cinderella method, like we just believe that dad is supposed to come riding in on this white horse and pick us up and have a great day with us and give us ice cream and call us sweetheart and all of this stuff. And that's just not what dads do. That's not the way dads love. And so my challenge as an adult woman has been to understand what it means to be fatherless. And I don't mean that the father, you didn't have a dad. It takes a father to, everybody needs a father in order to get here. But when you're fatherless, what influence did your father have on your growing up?
Mm-hmm.
And even if he was he around in a way that helped you to have a healthy relationship with the other men in your life? And did he help to shape you into the woman that you should be so that your self esteem is intact? And we really need that as women, because we can look at our mothers and we can say, okay, that's how I want to be, or that's not how I want to be. A lot of times, girls, we go back and forth with our moms, but we really need our dad to validate us. We really need our dad to protect us. We really need our dad to say, you're enough, and this is how you should be treated. And so, if we don't have that influence, a lot of times we go looking for it in other places, and all the wrong places. And it's great if you have an uncle. It's great if you have a stepdad. It's great if you had your own dad. But if your own father wasn't there regularly, I'm not talking about Disneyland dad. I'm talking about every day, to reassure you that the bullies on the corner are not gonna be able to get you, that you're safe, that your mom is safe, that you're loved, that your household is safe, that you are enough. If you didn't have that all the time growing up, my guess is you probably have some issues with men in your current life. And I'm no psychologist. I'm no psychologist. I don't claim to be. I'm not even a life coach. I'm just a real estate agent. But I have spoken to a lot of women, and a lot of women, especially in my age group, who yearn for the comfort of dad,
Mm.
and they look for it in the men that are in their lives.
Wow. You said you preached the whole sermon right there. Like in so many levels. One, I know for me personally, let me
I can't
just
hear
stop.
you.
You said you can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Mm-mm.
Can you all hear me out there viewing? I'm not muted, I don't think.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Can you all hear me? Let me know in the comments.
I don't know if your audience can hear you.
Yeah, you said you can't hear me, Danny? Okay, cool. You can't hear me, Monica?
Okay, well, it's just me.
I don't know why you can't hear me now all of a sudden. Um, I wanted to get to this comment before it disappeared. Danny said I was thanks, Drew. What's good, Drew? Danny said I was a tour manager. I was
Oh
a
no,
tour musician
I don't know what
until I
happened.
went on tour and came home and my daughter didn't know who I was. That was my last tour. Wow. Yeah, that's
I'm
yeah.
gonna log out and come back in because I can't hear a thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Um yeah, while she's going out and coming back in, I think that that's something that's very important. She said literally a mouthful. And I think that that's very important as far as context. But Danny, I'm glad you made that decision. And a lot of times, as men, I can only imagine, bro. I can only imagine. You know, that's one of the most difficult things about being a man, when especially if that's your outlook. You want to be a priest and you want to be a provider and all that there. I can honestly say that wasn't always my mindset. That wasn't always my goal. Um, I wasn't always a man. I wasn't always a man that I was proud of, so to speak. You know what I mean? Um, and a lot of times, what that comes from is our mental capability, which is why I was saying earlier that it's so important for us to be able to talk to one another, talk to someone, and share our feelings and what it is that we're going through. I realized from for a big portion of my life, if I be honest, I think for a big part of my life, I was going through the motions of being here. I existed, but I wasn't living. You know, um, and I think a lot of that stems from, again, like Monica said, I'm no psychologist, I'm no therapist, I'm none of that. But I think a lot of it stems from growing up where I did and how I did. Even though I was raised in the church, even though all that good stuff, um, I when I was in high school, I didn't never think about, it used to bother me when people would come to our school for lectures and they would talk to us and school assemblies. And, they would always ask those questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years and things of that nature there? It always kind of bothered me a little bit because I never seen me living past 20, 25 at the max. I didn't think long term. I wasn't thinking about, I didn't have any goals. I didn't have any focus. It's like every day you just living to live the next day. I'm not thinking about next where I'm going on summer vacation. I'm not thinking about college. I'm not thinking about career fields. I'm not thinking about any of that. I just want to live to see the next day. And when you're stuck in that rut mentally, I think a lot of times it stunts our growth or delays our growth and our maturity. That whole process of becoming a man, because you're not focused on anything. You're just maintaining. You're just here. You're just existing. Like I said, you're not living. You're just existing. And it took me a while to get past that. And it was like, oh man, now the years are starting to go by. 25 done came and gone. 30 done came and gone. 35 done came and gone. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm all this here. I never thought about none of this stuff. I never thought about that when I was growing up. And it's like once you're in it, it doesn't come with a manual. So I can only imagine, like you said, then I can only imagine that it breaks your heart because everybody has a different goal. Everybody has a different mindset as far as all of that. Can you hear me now, Monica?
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's very important that we say that. But what I was saying was you said a mouthful, Monica, because one of the things that really grinds my gears, I mean, it I don't even just the thought of it gets me tongue tied. But I hate when I hear women say, "Well, a real man." Yo, you can go ahead and finish. You can go ahead and stop your sentence or your conversation with me then, because I done tuned you out. Because you have no idea what it takes to be a man, let alone a real man. I don't care what your father did or what your uncle did or what your daddy did. The coach, your granddaddy, whoever. That's just your definition of what a man is. You have no idea what it's like to be a man at all. And just because it doesn't line up with your goals or what your idea of a real man is, doesn't mean that man is not a real man or not a man at all. So that really, oh my God, and I see it all the time. I see it all the time, and it's so nerve wracking. I'm not quite sure, not just me, to quite a few men. You know what I mean? Because even when we talk about this here, and I hate when people do that too, so I'm not going to do it. But it's like, this month was also Father's Day, and I hate when I see those different posts, to the real dads out there and this here and that there. Well, guess what? There's some deadbeat mothers out there too.
There are.
Let's be clear. Let's stop just making it look like just men are absentees. Just because you're a mother and just because you're in the household, like Monica was saying, it doesn't mean that you're present. It doesn't mean that you're always there. You might be working 16 hours a day and don't have time for your daughter or whatever the case may be. And I say it on the show a lot of times. When it comes to children, and this is just my opinion, this is not factual, this is just my opinion, and I always stand on that. When it comes to children, all the child remembers is that mommy wasn't there, daddy wasn't there. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter whether you was a drug addict. It doesn't matter if you were a workaholic and you was putting a roof over the head. All they know is that school cycle, they want to look out in the audience and they want to see their parents. It does not matter to that child. As a child, you don't understand that you have responsibilities as an adult. Nor should you understand that as a child. You know what I mean? So
You
we
know,
got to
we're
yeah.
different generations. So,
Mhm.
like, I remember when I was running track, I didn't expect my mom to come to my track meets. I didn't expect anybody to come. It was just what I did after school and, whatever. And now these kids will literally, not run if their parents don't come to the track meet. They'll have a breakdown. But I think it's, for daughters that are yearning for their dads and for the healing of, I care mostly about the relationship between Black men and Black women. I think that we have to go back to where it started. And I hate to always drag us back to 1870, whatever. I
Mhm.
hate to do that. But it is true. And I believe that there's a brokenness in us that we had healed at one point, but maybe we never really got fully over it. And then it was further destroyed in the 70s with, we always talk about like food stamp programs and the welfare programs that came in that tore up the families. But I think that moreover, like we are seeing like another kind of a renaissance of like relationships that they're trying to tear us down so much. And I don't know who put that seed. I don't know who they are, but I think the narrative is up to us to stop. And how do we learn how to stay with our daughters, stay with our fathers, stay with our relationships, and stay with one another? I think that's probably the most damaging thing is like, yeah, it's great to have your father around, but men also have to learn how to be an active member of their family. I think that women, especially Black women, we're so busy getting our degrees and getting our careers and getting, climbing the ladder so that we can earn the same, that men are feeling more and more pushed away, pushed out of the family. And so, I mean, it's always every 10 or 20 years, it's always another ism that we're having, but that's the ism that we seem to be experiencing today. And I'm just saying that, like, in order to heal that, nothing touches my heart more than when I see a dad with his, his kid on his shoulders, or he's out playing baseball with his kid and showing him how to throw the ball, or what have you. And a lot of dads do that. I don't want to say that they don't, because I know that there are a lot of Black men that are involved in their children's lives. So I don't even want to imply that they're not. But for the daughters, why are the women so broken today? I'm identifying that there is something missing. And they seem to have really great, we all seem to have really good relationships with our mothers and our grandmothers and our aunties, but there's some sort of missing piece when it comes to the dad.
Yeah.
And
And that's profound. And like you said, that's not an isolation on anyone, or that's not to, you know, discourage anyone, because one thing I always say, especially around Father's Day, when I talk about Father's Day, if you're not it's never too late. You know, it's never too late to be to work, or work harder. You know what I mean? When people tell you, you know, or share their concerns with you, it's okay to try to figure things out, or you know, compromise with you know, different things, you know, because it's very important. And like, and I'm glad you brought up some good points there as well, because I always wondered that myself too. We're not about to go down that rabbit hole, because I could talk about that all day. But it's like, when it comes to systematic racism, and we see over the history of Black people in America, even when you, like you said, when you go back to the back in the day, for a slave to rip families apart, it doesn't matter. Think about that. You know, when we talk about men's mental health, can you imagine living in a day and time where you, as a slave, you have a wife, and your owner can literally come in here drunk on his gin and tell you to get out the bed so he can lay with your wife, and make you stand there and watch that? Can you imagine what that does to you, to a man psychologically? Can you imagine a father, just because the owner caught feelings or whatever, say, you know what, I'm gonna send the husband to California, and I'm gonna send the wife to Wyoming, and I don't care what happened to the kids. You know what I mean? Like, since the beginning of Black people in America history, they have been trying to destroy the Black family. You move up into modern day times, like you said, in the 70s with the WIC and the welfare programs. How in the world is that you could tell me? And it's cool that if people that need help, I'm not bashing people on welfare, anything of that case may be. Everybody needs help, or, you know, pick me up here and there and that there. But for you to tell women, well, the only way that we're gonna help you, but the only way we're gonna help you is if you don't have a man in that household. People, why are we choosing to ignore these red flags? They're not even hiding it anymore. They're showing us that they don't want us together, because you know why? There's nothing like the Black family unit. You know, me and my mom, we have different discussions from time to time. And one of the things I tell her, um, is, this is just my opinion, but it was like, the Black community, the Black family was much more stronger when we had nothing. You know, in the 50s and 60s, you know, they ate dinner together. You know, we all sat around the house, and we ate dinner together. If it was a rainstorm, I used to, oh my God, as a kid, I hate coming down here to North Carolina, because if it was raining, grandma, get off that phone. Everybody had to come sit in the living room on the floor together. We telling family stories, and we was more of a community. We were more together. But now that people got their own jobs and their own money, it's like we're too busy, and we got this going on, we got that going on. It's like we lost that structure, we lost that foundation of togetherness and community that once was. And I think a lot of times some people are not conscious of it, but when we do become conscious of it, It's important for us to change that narrative. You know what I mean? Work together to get our community to where we want it to be. We don't have to keep doing what they want us to do, so to speak. You know what I mean? We can help build one another up.
I don't know if counseling is always the right answer. I think that there's I don't know if you watch The Shy, but one of the things that I really love on The Shy is, and it's I've never seen it happen, but they have like these black male councils. They all,
Mm-hmm.
all the brothers get together and they meet and they have cigars and a couple drinks or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
they talk about their stuff, and that's counseling. And so I don't know what the counseling looks like, but I did some research on it, and it says that Asian American men, 25% of Asian American men get counseling. 36% of Hispanic Latino men get counseling, and only 39% of Black men get counseling, whereas 52%, more than half white men, get counseling. And so I think that that's still a huge gap. 39% of the utilization, and I guess they're speaking when it says Black men, I'm assuming they're speaking 18 and up. But that leaves so many men that are not able to talk about what's going on and how they feel and how they were treated throughout their day and how they feel treated within their family, and did they receive the proper fathering. So when I think about these men who are not properly fathering, I go back to their dad and I look back and I say, well, how were they parented? And a lot of times I'm finding that there's a loose sense of fathering for that father. And
Mm-hmm.
so if that man is not fathering in a way that maybe his children need him to, and I'm not saying the way his lady needs him to or the mother needs him to, I'm saying the way his children need him
Mm-hmm.
to, then chances are he didn't receive that. Or if he did receive that, there may have been some other type of brokenness there. But I really think that there's probably a lack that he received, and so he doesn't know how to give what he never had, what he never received. And so I just wonder if more Black men would be interested in counseling one another, talking to one another, talking to their buddies. I don't know. I'm not. I don't sit around in the circles of men asking
Mm-hmm.
questions usually, but I just wonder, like, how do they get this off their chest so that they can show up in their own life? Because there's something very gratifying about parenting if you are involved instead of having all these regrets later, like I wish I could have, would have, should have. There's something very gratifying about being involved in your child's life, and who's going to take care of you when you get old.
No doubt. Hey, what's good, Dorothy? Thank you so much. Danny said, I love being a father. I was hands on. I potty trained all four of my children, and I was involved in every aspect of their lives. Shout out to you again, Danny. Um, and I think that's very important. And no, I'm not really into the shot. I don't. I've stopped supporting once they got rid of Brandon, even though that was his own doing or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But I do peek at it from time. Well, not this last season, but I did see what you're talking about, and I thought that was a good addition to the show. Um, and for our culture, period. I did like that little tidbit that Lena added to the show concept because I think that that's very much needed. Even when I go home to Jersey and out of town, we don't might not get into the meat of the potatoes and everything, but me and my guys, we do that from time to time. Hey, you good, man? What's going on with you? You know what I mean? And had those different kind of conversations. But I think that is very important. And something that you said too, I think a lot of times, and I can't speak for everyone, because I just read Danny's comments. So Danny was very active in his children's life. But I think a lot of times we can't use that as a cop out just because you didn't have it. That's cool, or you don't know how to give what you never had. Because once upon a time, at some point in each and every one of our lives, male or female, we were a child. So I think a lot of times, whether we had that example, which is why I think choice is very pivotal and important too. Because you might have had that and you just choose not to be the father, the great dad that your father was to you, or whatever the case may be. So it's about choice for some, But I think a lot of times what we do is, being that we all were children, even though we weren't all parents, we all have been children at some point. I think a lot of times when we enter parenthood, we start parenting from that perspective of what we would have wanted as a child. You get what I'm saying? Like, but that might not be how your child looks at things because they're their own individual. You know what I mean? They might not, like you said, and uh, I think I might have not been clear earlier. Like, cause where I'm from the hood, so it was definitely not an expectation for my parents to be at my football games and sport events and like things of that nature there.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, as an individual, it would have been nice, when you watch the movies and stuff, and you see Rudy, his father, up in there cheering in the stands and all that type of stuff. It would be cool. It definitely was not expected though.
Right. Right.
If it wasn't expected, but it would have felt nice. I like when I watch those kind of feel good movies. Like, oh man, yeah. Even with, like I said, I love the movie Rudy. I love anything football related, especially sports movies. But that whole movie, that dynamic with him and his dad, boy, you know good and well you can't play no football. You can't play for no Notre Dame and all. You know what I mean? But he wanted to prove his father wrong. He didn't hold it against his father. He didn't have animosity toward his father. He said, you know what? All right, Dad, that's the way you feel. I'm gonna make you proud of me one day. I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna live my dream. I'm not gonna let you step my dream down. Dorothy said New Jersey under a major heat and air quality advisory until like July 3rd, 12 a.m. Yeah, we're the one on down here too, Dorothy. And prayers up. I see you said that you recovering from surgery. So prayers up for you. But yeah, so um again, it's very important for us to talk about our feelings, find an outlet, talk about these different things that matter, and also seek advice from different outlets, not just the significant other, not just your spouse and all that there, because a lot of times what we do is we started trying to focus on what, like you said earlier, we focusing on what the other person means because we don't want to hear their mouth. We want to keep them happy, but it might not be in the child's best interest, so to speak. So I think a lot of times, whether you're talking about fathers or mothers, we got to get back to putting children as the main priority.
Right.
We got to put our feelings aside, our animosity aside. What is best for this child? You know what I mean? Because that was just always my mindset. And I understand that everybody can't do it. But I always just felt like anybody that's ever born, it should be their God given right that they should be able to talk to mommy every single day and they should be able to talk to daddy every single day. You know what I mean? Period. Like, and I know everybody can't always work out that. For me, I think that is selfishness because I just can't do it. You should have thought about all that before you had a child. You know what I mean? So, and like you said earlier, a lot of times, men and women, both that you can say that same thing for the mothers. Um, you might not ask to be a parent. You know what I mean? But you were willing to take that risk. You know that it was a risk. And anytime you have sex with somebody, there's a possibility that you could end up with a child. So you got to be more mindful of these different things and not get caught up in the moment and in the passion of the moment because we're talking about a whole life. We're talking about a whole life, and the decisions that you make, whether you want to admit it or not, or you realize it, or whether you want that responsibility or not, it doesn't matter. It's here now. So what are you going to do to rectify that? Danny said we as parents have to make showing up a priority. We may not make every game or recital, but when we say we're going to show up, we have to keep our word. Absolutely. Dorothy said, Elisha and DeAndre are blessed to have a father like you. I appreciate that, Dorothy. Um, as well as a mother like their mother. Like, and that's one thing I always try to say. Despite being divorced, um, this is something that we did together. You know, I remember sharing with my ex-wife one time. Look, you never been a single mother a day in your life. I might have not always been present, but I was always there. And vice versa. So anytime anybody mentioned anything about our sons, that's something that we did. That's something that we could be proud of. It wasn't something that I did. It wasn't something that she just did. That's something that we did together. It took both of us to make them. It took both of us to raise them into the man that they are today. And very proud of both my sons, and I'm quite sure she is as well. Um, so yeah, but shout out to you, Dorothy, and everybody else out there. But yeah, let's just make that a normal thing. You know what I mean? Like Danny said it best. Putting Monica said it as well. Putting the child's cares and needs first. You know, absolutely.
How do we do that? How can we do that better? Because I think that it's easy to talk about it, but I think that
Mhm,
there's actionable things that we can do to put our children ahead of our own needs from the women and from the men. But tonight we're talking about dads. So
mhm,
I think that there are some things that fathers can do, and one is not to be tore up and hurt if you didn't choose to have a relationship with this woman.
mhm,
If you didn't choose to have a relationship with this woman and she has the decides to have the child again, you took that risk with her and had this child. But if you did choose to have that child, then what does that look like? I would love to see more men talking about what does that look like to show up in their children's lives, to show up in their families' lives. What
mhm.
does that mean? Because I think more men really want to be a part of their families' lives. I think that men, women talk about the soft life. I think men want a softer life too. And so just knowing that they can have that, what does that look like?
For me, and this is just I'm just giving my opinion. You guys can get in the comments and share your thoughts as well. Drew, Danny, Dorothy, or whoever else is out there tuning in. I seen a Barbara Brown. Thank you too for tuning in, Barbara. For me though, I think one of the ways that we can start that is by having more conversations with the child. You know what I mean? Even at an early age. Now, of course, baby, what would you like? What would you like to do today? What would you like to talk about? Well, I want ice cream for dinner. Now we have to use being an adult in moderation too, but let them know that they're being heard. Let them know that their feelings matter. Let them know, you know, how much of a priority that they are. You know what I mean? Um, I think that is very important. Like one of the things that we used to do, and it bothers me. Like you said, we can't cry over spilled milk. But I remember at one point in time, you know, in our family dynamic, we made sure that Monday night was family night. So uh whether we playing 500 or we're playing some games or we're gonna let you guys pick the movie that you want to watch. Monday nights is reserved for family night. You know what I mean? I'm not going to no meetings. Mom's not going to any meetings. You know, Tuesday for date nights. That's just me and mom time. But let's make sure we got a night each night of the week where it's about you. And so that's taking your daughter out on a date or taking her to get some ice cream because I noticed that that's one thing that you said too. And I think that that's very important, especially for men. I don't have any biological daughters, so thank God for that. Not hating on women, I just never wanted to. I never wanted a daughter. Uh-uh. People always think I be joking. I said no. Listen, if I had found that I was having a daughter, I would have literally been probably suicidal again, because I would have not known. I don't have any. I don't have any biological sisters either, so only woman I've ever had in my life was my mother. I don't know anything about doing hair. It was one of the cutest commercials ever with LL back in the day where he's trying to fix his daughter hair. And that would have been so me. I wouldn't have known at all what to do with a girl. But I think that is important because, like you said earlier, and the guys that I do and my friends that I do know that have daughters, one thing that I see is a lot of times, whether they realize it or not, it's fascinating to me when you talked about the validation. When I look at the relationship between my god brother, I'm gonna let him stay nameless. I remember one day, uh, her mom and her aunt they went and got their nails done, and she was like maybe 7, 8 at the time, and she had came back with her fingernail polish on, and it was this particular color. He said, "Go upstairs and take that off right now." Go up there and take it off. But daddy, go up there and take that off right, right now. And she's down with, but it's gonna matter when she becomes an adult because she's gonna carry herself a certain way. No, you don't need to dress this way. No, you don't need to look this way. You're a little girl. So you're not gonna be a grown-up woman. I always and it's totally off subject. But I remember what was her name? John Benet Ramsey. I remember when with her issue and when she lost her life and it was being all over the news. And the first thing I kept saying was like, why would any parent, and I'm not blaming false on them or anything, but why would any parent have their little, how old she was, daughter looking like Marilyn Monroe, all this makeup on and dresses and like, you people are sick. That's not normal. This is not normal. Let little girls be little girls. Let little boys be little boys. That's why we living in such a dangerous time with all this open mindedness here. And what do you I want to identify as? And stop it. Stop it. I'm not even going there. I'm not even going there. Julian said, I think coming back to spend the family time, and I mean quality time is a good start. All phones and tablets away. This will open up the floor to the conversation. Absolutely, Drew. Absolutely, because that's one thing that we used to do too. And hey, put that stuff down. I'm putting mine down. My ringer is not on. We can't communicate. This is our time together right now. And I think that is very important. Another thing we need to do too, it doesn't even have to be out of state or big, lavish, expensively. Sometimes just go have a family picnic at the park, or making sure that we have quality family time. What's going on with you in school? Because you brought up a good point earlier too. A lot of times as men, everybody's different. But when I leave, that's my saying at work. I do my 8 and I hit the gate. Meaning, people like, did you check? No, I'm not checking no emails. I'm not checking no group chats. Like, if you don't convey your work related stuff to me within my work hours, I promise you I'm not getting it. Because I'm not responding to nothing outside of that. When I leave work, I'm leaving work dead. All the issues, all the problems. I don't want to come home and talk about work. You know what I mean? But that's just me. Some people want to talk about it, and some people might need to. Now, that's not saying, having said that, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, that don't mean I don't want to hear about your day. That's if you want to talk about it. I'm willing to listen. I just don't want to talk about mine.
Your lady wants to talk about it. She trust me, she wants to talk to the point of nauseum about it.
Yeah. So and it's like if you know that about me, and if I'm telling you this about me, then you never talk to me about your, I don't know, I don't even know what you do at work, because I don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. If you want to share what you be about your day, share away. I don't care to talk about work when I'm outside of work. You know what I mean?
Tell me,
but everybody's different.
What do you think about the nuclear family working together? We see it on TV. I have not seen it a lot in real life, but I know that some people are doing this new parenting where you're in a new relationship. There's a new man in your child's life, and you still have to co-parent with that parent. How do you feel about the families coming together, having a barbecue? Stepdad and real dad are there, and new mom and regular and mom is there. How do you feel about that new wave parenting where it's like, can we all come together and get along and eat at the table and play the games, phase 10 and with the kids?
It's called what is what they call it nowadays, the blended family.
The blended family, yeah.
And I think that is, me personally, okay, you asked me my opinion. I think it's a beautiful thing when it can be done. When it can be done. I would definitely have an issue for me. It would be hard for me. And I understand that everybody can't do it. I see it a lot. I see it a lot now, and I'm like baffled. Like, the ex-husband is cool with this one here, and like, yo, I was just having a conversation last week with one of the viewers, and they were talking about the dynamics of how they were married for X amount of years, they have a child together, and the new girl, the new wife, they've been together for 23 years, and the ex-wife and the new girlfriend talk more than him and the ex-wife do, because they have that. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. I just don't understand it because I can't never see me being in that type thing. That's one reason I thank God that my boys are adults now, so I don't have to worry about that. My boys are men, but I think that is very important for us to put pride aside, to put ego aside. I'm saying it jokingly, but in all seriousness, you got to put all that stuff aside because again, the priority should be the child.
Okay.
And if you're going to be around my child, all right, these are certain things that I know, and I'm not telling you how to run your household. I'm just saying, you know what I mean. So it's a very difficult situation to be in, where I don't know. I really I would know. All I know is that I wouldn't want to be in that position. But for those that can do it, I think that is a beautiful thing.
One of your viewers said there's a good and a bad side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know what the bad side would be unless there's still feelings there, for the ex. I don't.
Go back to what used to work. We have gotten away from a lot. Dorothy said, "I miss everyday family dinners." Monty said it would be hard for many to let go of the pettiness and past trauma to make that work. That's good. Yeah, Julia said that blended family have it good and bad sides. Danny said, I told my wife that my ex-wife is my family, and if she had an issue with that, with the relationship, wasn't going to work. Cool. GTG. Oh, gotta go. Have to make a call to Arizona. All right, Dorothy, thanks for tuning in. Danny, I think I commend you on that because I think that's a big I won't say an issue or a problem, but I think that's very important as well. To be upfront about the dynamics before, beforehand. When you enter a relationship, listen, all right, I got a baby mama, I got baby mama drama, whatever the case may be, or it might not even be drama. I'm just letting you know that my child means something to me, and I'm not going to end that relationship with her because that's the mother of my child. That's one of the things that's what I find difficult at this phase in life. People always, well, you will get married again, or are you going to date again, or all these different kinds of dynamics. And one of the things for me is like I've always been honest, and there's a lot of women, a lot of my female friends tell me that is unfair, but that's just my reality, and I'm gonna always be honest with you. But I can't date a woman with little children because I'm not looking to be somebody else's father. You know what I mean? I'm trying to avoid the situation that you're talking about. You know what I mean? Now I have no problem with being a male figure in that person's life or whatever the case may be. But me personally, I just prefer women, if you're gonna have children, to be older, out the house, adults, or whatever the case may be, because it is somewhat of a package deal. You know what I'm saying?
So I used to be the lady that like I wanted all the children, had so many kids in the shoe, or with the old woman who lived in the shoe had so many kids she didn't know what to do. I wanted to be that lady because I'm an only child, so I always wanted to have a bunch of kids, and I have raised a lot of children, but I only have 2 biological kids. I used to be that woman, but the older I get, the wiser this gray hair gets. I don't want any children either. And I'm finding that more and more men are having children later in life. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because, here we are approaching soon, eventually retirement, but we are at the stage of life where it's like our kids are grown and we can kind of do what we want to do. But he has a 3-year-old or he has a 10-year-old. Man, I mean, I don't know, ladies, you guys might want to take my lady card, but I'm just like, what time is dinner over? Check please. I'm not here for it. I don't want it. I don't want it. It's too much. It's too much.
Like I was involved with this one young lady, and we didn't even it was over before we even started, really, because she's like, oh, you don't want to have any children, then it's not going to work. And I'm like, we're 50 years old.
Yeah.
Who wants to have a child at 50 years old? I could even see if you didn't have any children already.
Right.
You already have children.
Right.
I'm not about to start all over. Well, my baby boy man is 27 years old. I will be crazy, insane, and out of my mind to start all the way over. I'm not doing it. Sorry, I'm not doing it.
Well,
Um,
there's always that one baby that comes unexpected later.
I'm glad I ain't got none of them accident babies, what they call the D baby, all that. Nah. We done. I'm done. Official. Lord is my witness. uh, Daddy said we have 4 children. We have grandchildren that we want to be present for them, and animosity restricts the family dynamic. Yeah, that's why I said it takes a lot of maturity. Because it's very important. Monty said I'm 55 with the 5-year-old. Yeah, I get that, man, but you started late, Monty, and like I said, that's not for everybody, but that's something that you guys chose to do, and kudos to you. I ain't mad at that at all.
Yeah.
Danny said, Marvin, when I was single, I didn't date women who had children younger than my youngest. I have no interest in starting over. I know that's right. Shoot. Parenting the first time around with now, I think I will be that much more of a better father at this age. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I done learned, you know what I mean, the ins and out. I done learned what caused beef in me and my son's relationship. I done learned different things to avoid. So I will be a better father, but I'm not doing it. I'm not starting over. Daddy Monty said true. Hey, what's good, Monty? I got to get you back on the show too, Monty, man. You gotta holler at me, man. But yeah, so I think that's one of the things that we could do. Like you were saying, how can we get there? I think it's very important to let that child know that they are heard and their feelings matter. Talk about what's going on in school. Are you being bullied? It's okay. Is anybody touching you inappropriately? That was something that I was real adamant about when it came to my boys. And because they know me and they know where I'm from. But I would always make it my business say, listen, I promise you, Daddy not going to do anything crazy. Daddy's not going to do anything. But I need you to understand one thing. I need you to always be honest to me if anybody puts you in a situation where you feel uncomfortable. Come tell me. I promise you I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I don't mean I wasn't going to do it. No, sometimes you gotta lie. Sometimes you got to protect the children. But I think that's very important that people feel that necessity, that children feel safe in that regards. That they could come to mommy and talk to mommy about anything, that they could come talk to daddy about anything. So like you said, not just being there, but being present and letting them know that the world revolves around me in moderation. Because we don't want to grow up, we don't want to raise a narcissist either.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So it's important that we balance it out, but let them know that they're being heard and take on some of their suggestions. You know what I mean? What you want to do. I remember one of the things that I remember talking about family dynamics. I can remember, and we was less fortunate. We wasn't money and all that there. But one of my favorite memories of a childhood was like when my dad drove buses for a living. He drove for Trailways and Greyhound charter buses, all that. So he was always gone, always on the road. But it was nothing like on a Friday night. My mom would make it a business where we would go get like on Friday nights we would go get cold cuts. We make our own sandwiches and we got to watch Mr. Belvedere and our Friday night lineup. And then it was like my favorite part was like when we got the roll pennies. Like my father had all these pennies that he would keep, and we would roll them up and put them in a little 50 in there and tape them up, get them all together, tape them to the bank. But it was nothing like that to me. Like as crazy as that may sound, simple as it may sound, it was something that we all did together. And that quality time, to this day, I'm a 50-year-old man, and I still reminisce on that sometimes because, like, we really was poor. Like we really was rolling pennies for family fun. But it was just that. It was family fun. You know what I mean? So it's about doing things together.
You brought up earlier, like when life was simpler, or sometimes when people have less resources, that it's actually a sweeter time. And I agree. I think that that's when you really seek each other out and you look for those family fun night games to do and, inexpensive things that you can do together. And I think that it's a blessing. It may money does help. It helps the situation, but I do believe that as a family unit, sometimes it's better. The less you have, the more you can really appreciate one another.
Mhm.
But you brought up a thing that made me sort of think about. So when you're dating these ladies that have children, I know you mentioned that you don't like to date women that have children, or smaller children or what have you. But I'm wondering, like, in the situation where you date someone who does have children, like, when do you meet the kid? Do you get involved in the kid's life? Like, at what point do you enter into that child's life?
Mhm. All right, I'm gonna answer that for you in 1 second. Julian says, "So what if a child just comes? Not that you was planning on having him or her. Will you both still look at that the same way at your age now?" Um, Again, Jew, I avoid that at all costs. First of all, I'm not doing anything to have any children at this point in my life. So that's not something I even have to worry about. That's why I can say it so confidently. I'm not saying that I'm saying I'm absent. I'm not saying I'm celibate. Celibacy meaning that you never having sex again in life. I'm not saying that at all. More power to the people that's out there. Shout out to you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm abstaining at this stage of the chapter in my life. So I don't have to worry about it. That's why I said I can say that so confidently. I'm not having no children at this age. Now, as for Monica, if it just will happen, I don't know how you feel about that. Do you feel any different?
It's not going to happen. There's things have been put in place where it's not going to happen. But, but I think every once in a while my maternal gene does kick in. And I see a baby and I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do that again? But I think that women, I'll just speak for myself. I think that sometimes we can pigeonhole ourselves as mothers because it's a comfort zone. We know we love taking care of our children, and it's a comfort zone to be able to love and nurture our children. Maybe I don't know, whatever. We just enjoy being there. I always say I enjoy being my kid's mom, but I also enjoy the phase that we are in and entering. I enjoy being my kid's mom. I love going to the games. I love going to back to school nights. I hated filling out all the paperwork on the first night of school for all, the kids and all of that stuff. But I love packing their lunch or making their dinner. My son used to say he loved coming home at 3 o'clock because he knew dinner would be prepared. I love those things. But I'm also really loving where my children are now. My adult children are now. My daughter has 2 beautiful kids. My grandchildren are gorgeous, and I love them. And she's really parenting her children in a very millennial way. And I'm coming to really respect her gentle parenting and the way that she's parenting her children. It's a beautiful new experience for me to watch, to observe. And then my son, he's in college, and I'm enjoying watching him learn who he wants to be and make plans for his life as to where he wants to be. That is a beautiful stage. And I think that by allowing ourselves to enter the next stage, the next phase of our life, it gives us permission to go on with our lives. I think that some people kind of fear going on with their lives. They fear getting to know themselves. And so they stay in that place of like, I gotta be the mom. I gotta do this. I gotta be in my kid's life. And I mean, of course you want to be in your kid's life and you want them to be in yours. But there comes a point in time when your children can go on and live their life themselves, and you are now the supporting character, the supporting actor in their life, and you're not the main character in their life anymore. And so that I'm enjoying that phase of just learning how to be the supporting cast member. Just come in, say my 2 lines, and get off the stage. That's
right.
an interesting phase also. And each phase I'm sure has its challenges and whatnot, but this is a phase that I'm starting to embrace. It took us a while to get to this point of embracing it, but I'm embracing it now. Yeah.
Danny said it's still 1954 in my house most of the time. I feel you there. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I said what I said earlier too. That is as far as men's mental health is knowing that it's okay to start over. And the reason that I say it was, I know that for me it was difficult. When I first got divorced, it was like my world was like literally shattered. Like life as I knew it was just totally different when you've known this way of living, so to speak. Um, it was just difficult. I'll put it that way. The difficult part was literally coming to a place where I had to figure out who I was, who I wanted to be, what did I like. You know, I didn't. I no longer had the well. What are we gonna have for dinner? You no longer consideration. I absolutely loved being in a place where if I don't eat today, guess what? No harm, no foul. Nobody's gonna. You know, it wasn't. So it took a while to transition. I had to start filling out. You know, finding out what do I really like. Do I like to be alone? Do I like to be like finding out who I am as an individual? And that's the most difficult part for each and every one, like men and women alike. I think is like, what is life going to look like now, and what do I want? I was the type of person. That's why a lot of people will ask me about being remarried and different things of that nature. There, one personally, I don't believe in remarriage. That's for another day, another topic, so to speak. Because my issue has always been if you believe honor your marriage to vows, to death do us part in sickness and in health. I don't understand how can you do that with somebody else and that person that you did it with the first time is still walking around and breathing fresh air. But that's just my own hiccup. You know what I mean? To each his own. But it was like for me, I had no idea of genuinely what I was interested in, what hobbies I had, what I like to do, whether and it was just like that sense of free. I was using that word early a lot. People were like, "What do you like the most about life?" I'm like, freedom. Like I just love. I make, you know what I'm saying. I don't have to be considerate of anybody else's feelings, so to speak. And I'm not saying that in an arrogant way or that it was like a burden, because it's not. You know what I mean? It's just it comes part of life. What are we gonna have for dinner? I'm about to stop and get me something to eat. Do you want some or vice versa? Whatever. When you no longer have any of that, it's like, did I eat today?
You can eat Frosted Flakes for dinner.
You know what I mean? Whatever you want to. It's like being an adult kid. If you want to have cereal, you want to have ice cream for dinner, you can do it. and there's no judgment. You know what I mean? So learn how to balance that and having real conversations with yourself. You know, do I want to get into another relationship because I don't want to be by myself? Do you know what I mean? Do I want to date women with children because I'm so used to being in a family dynamic, in a full house, so to speak? You know, you gotta have these kind of conversations. I think it's very dangerous when people jump from one relationship to the next without healing or without, you know what I mean? Because there's so much. If you scrape your knee, you can keep taking a shower all you want to, but if you don't put no bacitration oil or go get stitches or whatever the case may be and close it up, it's just a matter of time before it get infected.
Right.
And even when it heals, it's not going to heal correctly.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or the way that it should. So it's very important that we deal with our issues before, jumping on to the next. Danny said, bro, I had to learn what I liked from the grocery store. I took 11 years to learn me before I decided to remarry. Yeah. See, and I think that's very important. And to each his own, because I got male friends that's the same way. Like, yo, you divorced, and a month later, they getting remarried. They engaged like a month later. Like, bruh, more power to you, but are you sure that that's what you want? But I realize that everybody's different. You know, some people just can't take being by themselves. Some people just can't. I love my own company. I have no problem with an audience of one. I'm comfortable with entertaining myself. I don't need anybody else to entertain me. I'm that kind of loony a little bit, but I'm cool with that too. You know what I mean? I'm cool with that.
They say married people live longer, though.
I don't know about that.
I guess it depends on the quality of your marriage.
They probably live longer with in addition to having high blood pressure too. The stress levels of marriage. Nah, I'm just saying because at the end of the day, I'm just being funny. But marriage is a beautiful thing, especially for those. Even though I'm divorced, I still believe in the institution of marriage.
Yes.
But like we talked about last week, I do also believe that marriage isn't for everybody. The people I hate that saying. Well, there's more fish in the sea. Everybody deserves to be with somebody, and no, I don't jack that. Even like with the biblical people, everybody in the Bible wasn't married. There still were men and women of God that He used mightily, but marriage didn't define them. The term wife or husband, that's something that you want. You know what I mean? As an individual. And there's nothing wrong with that, but don't let that define you. Or if you don't become a parent, you're less of a woman or less of a man because you've never been a parent. No. Everybody doesn't want to be a parent, just like everybody doesn't want to be married. And it's not for everybody. You know what I mean?
Assignment. I think you're absolutely right about that. Like figuring out who you are is so important, and figuring out what your assignment is, because it may not be your assignment to be a parent or be a spouse, or maybe your assignment was at one time and then God has reroute you and you end up having another assignment. You can have two assignments in life. So I think that just expecting us to fall into these categories, one of the worst things I think, and please forgive me, don't throw Christian Bibles at me for this, but I think one of the worst things that Christian families can do is tell their children that they have to be married. They have to be married. Mm-hmm. And because I think it forces people into relationships that they wouldn't naturally or normally get into.
Or want to be in.
Because they feel like, they don't want to displease God. And I'm not qualified to really speak on what God wants or doesn't want, but I just really do believe that marriage is not for everybody. And you can still be used by God and not necessarily be married. You can have a wonderful, loving relationship with somebody, mm-hmm. and still not be married. Mm-hmm. I think that marriage is a special assignment. It's a special appointment, just like parenting is a special appointment. And being single is a special appointment. Being an auntie is a special appointment. Being an uncle is a special appointment. So I think embracing those different phases and stages of life, and knowing that you don't have to necessarily have that because all of your girlfriends or your guy friends do that. We need to start giving each other permission to not be married as Christians. And I think that you might find that people are more happily married. Their marriages last a little bit longer.
And Monty said no, they say married men live longer. It keeps us from making risky decisions.
Yes.
I get that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still glad to be here. I don't know if I ever want to go to that route again. And to your point, though, I think that's very important that what you said as far as the church dynamic, because you got to realize everybody has a different ministry. Everybody has a different calling. Everybody has a different assignment. And just because you love going to church and you're faithful to your church don't mean you need to be no usher. If you got a bad, stinky attitude, you feel what I'm saying? Everybody's not called to be in the deacon, just like everybody isn't called to be in the pulpit. It doesn't mean that you have less of a calling or a ministry. Your assignment could be working the parking lot and people talking to you on their way out. Hey, listen, man. They ain't heard nothing that the preacher spoke. But listen, man, I don't know what it is about you, man. I see you out here in this parking lot. I was just wondering if you got a word of prayer with me real quick or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's important for us to be able to handle the task that we take on, but understanding our position. I always use sports analogies. A center is a center in basketball. I don't want no point guard trying to be a center. And I don't want no center trying to be a small forward. Play your role, play your position, and we win as a team. Period. And when we take on that mindset, I think we get along, but we go a lot farther. You know what I mean? Just my opinion. But stop always being especially in church, it drives me crazy to see people envious and jealous of other people calling. You don't know what that person went through or is currently going through to be in that position. All you see is, man, I would love to be able to play the drums like that. I would love to be able to play the key. Oh man, I wish I could preach like that. Won't you seek God about what it is that you're supposed to be doing? How about that? How about you be the best version of yourself as opposed to being a carbon copy of somebody else?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I guarantee you'll find more pleasure in that thing than you would trying to mimic somebody else. You know what I mean? We all have our own niche to find. We just got to find it. Let me ask you, before we get out of here, let me ask you real quick, Monica.
I'm sorry.
What were you saying?
I said I enjoy dating so much more now that I've taken the marriage off the table. Like it certainly could happen, but it doesn't have to happen. And now that it doesn't have to happen, I enjoy the process so much more.
From a woman's perspective, I wanted to ask you, what was that like? Because you mentioned that you was a divorcee. What was that like getting to the place to where you gave yourself permission to start over? Like, what was that like for you as a woman?
Well, that took a long time because, like I said, I felt like I had to be married. Whether my family made me feel that way or just my role in church or whatever made me feel that way. And it wasn't until I stopped feeling like I had to be married that I started enjoying myself. And so once I realized that I don't have to be married, man, like being single became so much more enjoyable, knowing that like I could sleep in the middle of this bed, I could eat Frosted Flakes for dinner, I could, sleep on the sofa if I choose, leave my bra hanging on the doorknob if I want to, the things that you don't normally do when you're coupled up. So that became a lot more enjoyable. I love being in a relationship. I absolutely do. But I think marriage was the response, the having to get married was putting this urgency in a relationship that of people that I would not normally want to tie my apple cart to. And once that was removed and I stopped worrying about that, I just had a conversation with God myself, and I was like, listen, this has not been working. I got married to please you. It didn't work. I married again to please you. That didn't work. I now want to find somebody who I can marry for myself, who I could be with endlessly for me. And that has worked so much better because when it doesn't work, then I don't have to lose my car and half my bank account and worry about paying out spousal support or being supported. I just it's just over. It's just over. We start over, and you've got to start giving yourself permission with people to start over. We've got to start giving ourselves permission to start over. Just because this is the person you met at 19 or 25 or 35 doesn't mean that's the person that you have to be with forever. And now if you're married and that's what you believe, great, fine. But I just believe that a lot of times we put ourselves in a corner. We back ourselves into a corner because this is what we do. This is what we've always done. This is what you have to do. I love what you said about like getting to know yourself again, learning to understand what you like to eat, what you like to do, what music you like to listen to. There's always the who am I in this couple? Who am I with us? But who am I just by myself? Who am I just by myself? I remember my ex never liked room deodorizer. He hated it. He felt like the whole house, he said, smelled like the 99-cent store. And I was so insulted because I just love an incense. I love to burn something. And now that he's not in my life, like I'm literally burning stuff all over the place. And I love, like you walk into each room and it smells like a different place. That's something that I had to allow myself to enjoy. And I don't want anybody to take that away from me. Compromise, sure, but I don't want to lose that about myself. So,
yeah. And thanks for that comment, Linda. Linda said, and I think that's a good point. She said the number one reason for men having mental health issues is the sexist family law court system. It's almost impossible for men to get 50-50 custody of their children. That's I thought that was crazy, the timing of you making that comment, because I was literally having a conversation about somebody that's going through something right now, and I'm praying for them in their situation. but it's brutal. It's brutal. Um, and I always ask myself this. I never understood it from movies and personal stuff, and you will see different things. So I guess that is true. I don't know. I've never been in that situation. My parents are still together. But it's like I would see different scenes and I would see different things play out when it came to divorce, especially with younger children. And you would see something like the daughter saying, "Well, what did I do? I do better in school. I clean up my room." Like what is it about children when it comes to divorce that they automatically think that is their fault, that the parents are getting divorced?
Children are self-centered. Children don't think of anybody else but themselves. Children think everything is about them.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. It used to baffle me, like what would make a child think that is their fault that their parents are getting a divorce? But I think Monty mentioned it earlier, pettiness. I think that is very, very important, especially when it comes to divorcing and younger children. I think it's very important for you to get to a place where you can have a conversation, to put your feelings aside and your ego aside, and you guys come up with what's best for this child. You know what I mean? Like, and everybody can't do that. I understand that everybody can't do it, but I'd rather have a difficult conversation with my child. I feel like this, and this is just again my opinion. I think the difficult conversation with your child, the earlier you have it, the better. You know what I'm saying? I would rather have that child with that conversation, that difficult conversation with an 8-year-old versus a 28-year-old. You know what I mean? Because now all of a sudden it's just not a position that I would want to be in, or a conversation that I would want to have, because it's hard to say. Well, because you never want to put it on the other parent. You know what I mean? You don't want to but things wasn't amicable between your mother and I. So
I'm probably going to sound like an advocate for divorce, and I'm not. I'm so not. But I do believe that having that conversation is important, because you're teaching your children how to honor themselves and how to honor their space. And I think that we don't really know how to honor ourselves or our space. That's the parenting we were talking about in the beginning of the conversation. It's like, how do you show up in your kid's life? You showed up in your kid's life at 8 and told them, hey, this is how. No, not hooray for the divorce. No, we're not saying that. But we're not saying that. But I think that you teach your children how to show up for themselves. And a lot of times we don't know how to have those conversations about what do I really like. We just meet somebody, oh, he's fine, and he looks good and he smells good. And okay, I'm going to be his wife. And there's so much more to being someone's life partner than just the way they look, the way they, smell, the way they, whatever. There's so many other things to navigate. A friend of mine once said, and I thought it was crazy when I first heard it, but he said, you should reevaluate relationships every 5 years. Like, you should have to reapply for your marriage license the way you reapply for your driver's license. And the more I got to thinking about that, I'm like, that is so true. We have to reapply for our driver's license, but you are allowed to drive through this marriage, drive your marriage into a wall. And you can just do that, from the age of 17 on, and nobody's going to ask you any questions. That's crazy. That's crazy. People change.
Wow, Angela had a lot to say. She said Monica is all about her getting divorced when your kids hurt. The kids hurt. Children who come from broken homes are more likely to go to jail, become drug addicts, being unemployed, etc.
I'm not saying that anybody should choose to raise children in a single family household, a single parent household. I think that ideally children do need two parents. Ideally they do. So I'm not all about divorce, but I do believe that an unhealthy household is just as detrimental or worse than a single household.
And that's what I was getting ready to bring up, Monica. I had a guest on the show years ago, and we were talking about divorce, and I remember asking them, uh, sort of sort of the question along the same lines as, how did it feel about, how did you feel like your divorce impacted your daughter? And his response was, to be honest, I wish we had got divorced earlier, because it's like, I had never been so anti-divorce. I had never looked at it like, I was more or less looking at it like Angela. Getting divorced hurts the kids, and I do believe that it hurts the kids. But I think that is that much more, especially now at this phase in life. I think it's that much more important that you don't raise a child in an unhealthy, toxic marriage home just for the sake of being married, because of how we feel a child should have both parents. Like, or if whether it's domestic violence or it's toxic, whatever that the dynamic is, or whatever the issue is, it could be do more damage them seeing that. Because let's say, for example, the husband is cheating, you're a cheater, and your child sees this, and they might not be privy to everything, but as they get older, they start saying, "Oh." And now all of a sudden, as a daughter, your daughter think it's okay to be sleeping with married men, because that's what daddy did. And if my husband go out there, mommy put up with it, so it's okay if my man cheat on me. So I think that it's a thin line, and everything is case by case. We can't generalize everything, but I think that's a very, very valid point. And again, I'm not saying that divorce is the answer either, but I think that it could do more damage than more good, just for the sake of saying the kids, depending on the situation.
I go back to the counseling. A friend of mine was talking to me about premarital counseling. The quality of premarital counseling is important also, because if all you're doing, I remember when I sat down with my pastor, and the conversation that we had, God bless him if he's listening. God, I love you, Pastor. I really do. But the conversation I was having with my pastor before I got married was so generic. Or do you love God? Do you believe this? I mean, there were just these general questions, and questions that needed to be cracked open to keep our marriage together were so much deeper. We needed to know, what was our intimate life going to look like? What was it going to look like when I didn't feel like it, or he didn't feel like it, or we just couldn't? What was our financial life going to look like when he wanted to spend too much money, or I didn't want to spend too much money? What did it look like when we were raising the children and he thought it was okay for them to wear this to the prom, and I felt like it was important to wear that? So there's so much more as far as like how you raise children, how you agree on money, how you agree about intimacy, or just things that are not necessarily considered to be abusive, but can be that can put you in a place of feeling unheard or unseen. What if one is not talking to the other for a day or two or three? That can really make the other person feel isolated and alone in that situation. Or what if, like you said about the cheating, and I don't think all men cheat, but if one person is running around, then that could make the children in the household feel like they're going to be insecure in their relationships as well. And then that adult, I'm only speaking from a woman's point of view, that adult woman grows up to date, and now she doesn't trust any man she's with. Oh, you're going to cheat anyways. You're going to cheat anyway. And here she had a good guy who probably wasn't going to cheat, but she never trusted him because she saw her daddy doing it. And I say that from experience, not just my own experience, but others. And I think that to say that all of these statistics that children are going to be worse off because they grow up in a household that is that suffers from divorce, I really want to look at those statistics. I want to look at them again, and when were they taken, and are they of the Black family? And like, let's get down to the really nitty gritty of it, because I truly believe, yes, a family does better together. Anything does. A cord of three We read that. Is it Ephesians? Where a cord of three is stronger than one by itself. You, God, and your partner. I believe that. But if the cord is broken, maybe the cord was broken before you came into the marriage. Maybe you never got the help that you needed. If the cord is broken, then unfortunately you create a domino effect of broken cords in your children. And I just believe that if you show your children how to resolve things, stay friends, stay peaceful, stay amicable, but resolve things so that your house, your domain can be intact. I believe that's a very healthy, necessary lesson also. And I'm not an advocate for divorce. I really am not. I know. I'm sorry, Angela. I'm really not an advocate for divorce.
Yeah. And like I said, everything really should be taken into consideration as a case by case. Everything isn't black. Life isn't black and white. I say that all the time. You can't generalize or this is the way things should be. No, you got to do what's best for you. You got to do what's best for that individual. Angela also said, she said, AI overview in the United States, women initiate approximately 69 to 70% of all divorces in heterosexual marriages. This trend is even more pronounced among college education women. She's also said most divorces are initiated by the woman. The reason for this is that women know they can leave the marriage and keep custody of the kids. Men know that divorce for them means their kids will grow up probably with somebody else. Lavelle said, same here. Marital counseling for an hour does not go into enough details. Absolutely not. I think that is very important too. And a lot of times, I think you made a good point. Again, I'm not bashing. I'm not bashing the preachers out there, the pastors out there. I'm a licensed minister myself. However, I do believe that when it comes to marriage or life in general, your pastor is not your therapist. It's okay to talk to your pastor and take their advice and all the kind of things in nature there, but you need to go get professional help. Somebody from there. I think it takes both dynamics. It's very important. And I felt the need to bring this up. Whether you're talking about father, whether you're talking about a husband. Back to my initial situation when I was going through what I was going through. It took me a while to realize, but men, get the help that you need, because if you no longer want to be here, or if you're just going through the motions of life, or you're just existing and not actually living with a purpose, or living for a purpose, or living toward a purpose, you're just existing. There's no way in the world that you could be the best father that you could possibly be. There's no way in the world you could be the best husband that you could possibly be. You need to get the help that you need to be so that you can thrive in every aspect of life. And it took me way too long to get that. But guess what? I'm so glad I finally got it. You know what I mean? Because now those things are important to me. But when I was in that state of mind where I didn't want to be here anymore, I didn't care about being a great husband. I didn't care about being Heath Huxtable. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be here. So it's impossible to fake being this great person, or being you know what I'm saying? Or being in the right state of mind that you should be in for the well-being of the people that's looking on you, or the people that's actually depending on you. So it's very, very important that we take care of ourselves mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Don't hold everything in. You know what I mean? Find help. Get it wherever you want to, whether it be a pastor, whether it be a therapist, whether it be a co-worker, whether it be a family member with somebody. But get the help that you need, because it's very, very important. And it's 85% of the people in jails in the U.S. grew up in a single-parent household. Men who are not allowed to see their children or only have the traditional 2 days out of 14 custody are far more likely to commit suicide. Yeah. So, like I said, and I get everything that you're saying. Everything what you're saying, it sounds very factual. But I think that it's very important, too, that kids aren't being raised in toxic environments. I think that that's very important, too, because that could is more detrimental.
Toxic environments, and if you've never experienced a toxic environment, it may be difficult to relate. You know, you haven't grown up in that type of environment. Maybe your parents are still married. Maybe they stayed married forever. Um, I don't know. But if you haven't experienced a toxic environment, it is as detrimental as, you know, living. It could be. It's like being an alcoholic. You know, it is the worst experience, the worst feeling if you don't know what you're walking into every day. If you are insecure in your household, I think that's why when you go to the doctor now, they always ask you, do you feel safe at home? You know, because they know that people have to have many different outlets to talk about how they're feeling. Maybe there's no other place where you could say I don't feel safe at home. For instance, growing up in some churches, I know it's very difficult for people to go to their pastor and say, I want to get a divorce. The pastor's going to do everything that they can to
Talk
try
you
to
out of it.
get you together and to talk you
Mhm.
out of it.
Mhm.
And there's got to be some way. You mentioned earlier that God doesn't necessarily care if you're married or not. I think that's what you said. And like, if you get into this marriage, that I don't know. Maybe that's not what you meant. But if you find yourself in a marriage that God did not ordain, maybe you got into the marriage and people say, well, He will ordain that marriage because you did do the honorable thing and get married.
Mhm.
But I just I don't know God that way.
Mhm.
I don't personally know God that way.
Mhm.
The God that I understand him to be, or her to be, or whatever. I really just think that God is more forgiving of the mistakes that we make. My dog was on my lap.
Okay.
I think that God is more forgiving of the mistakes that we make. I think that wants us to be. He wants our highest and best. Forgive me for using real estate terms, but He wants us to be at our highest and best use. You know, He wants us to be in a place where we can give back, minister to others, enjoy the flowers, smell the roses, you know, appreciate all that He has. And if you're in a toxic environment, you are not always in a position to be able to do that. If you're with somebody who is mishandling finances and using that in a way that is causing you to have financial insecurity, if you're with somebody who is mismanaging you emotionally, I'm not even talking about physical abuse. I'm not even
Mhm.
talking about you know, cheating and running around.
Mhm.
Just the things that may seem like, oh, you can work that out. You can
Mhm.
work out the fact that he spends too much. You can work out the fact that you guys' communication is not right. Can you? Can you really? And for how long are you? I mean, okay, for everybody. Well, God says 7 times 70. Really? Should I be 70 years old not talking to this clown? Should I be 70 years old not having a savings? Should I be 70 years old not accomplishing the fullness that I know that God put in me to experience in life? Um, so sometimes we make decisions, especially when we get married, for the purpose of fulfilling, you know, we don't want to be outside, we don't want to sin. So we're going to get married and we want to fulfill, you know, that. I just really think that God has enough grace over us and our children to forgive that situation and allow us to move on to a healthier situation. I don't think we should use divorce like like an abortion clinic. We shouldn't, like bad birth control. You know, we shouldn't be going to the abortion clinic every 5 minutes to get it because we could control ourselves differently. But I
Mhm.
do believe that God has enough grace and mercy over each one of us that He can anoint our children and bless our children. I do not believe if divorce was simply a way for our kids to all end up in prison, then every child of divorce would be the prisons would be falling over. I just believe that you can still end up being a well-rounded individual, you know, have the unfortunate case of divorce, but not experience your parents in toxicity. I would
Mhm.
much rather be a healthy parent alone than a toxic parent together. And I would rather I would rather see, you know, healthy parenting. I don't want my daughter to be in an unhealthy situation. I want her to be in a healthy situation. I don't want that for my son. Should my son accept some chick slapping up on him just because he married her? No, no. Get out
I
of
agree.
there. Run.
I definitely agree with you there.
I
Monty,
don't.
Monty said a big problem is we don't court anymore. There's no family oversight, so we get married without knowing each other. I think that's a very valid point, Monty.
Right.
Anti woke, thanks for joining us. He said the normalization of the fatherless home has devastated the black community. I do agree. We that's what we've been saying. That's what we said earlier. And Monty, to your point, I think that that's very crucial. And I didn't forget about your question either, Monica. But I think that that's a big part. Like we got the before we get married. I talked about it last week a little bit. We before we get married, we need to have real conversations. What do you believe in joint bank accounts? Do you believe in your own separate bank account? Do we have you have your own? I have my own. Do we have a joint bank account? Do you like the butter out, or do you want to keep it refrigerated? Like all these little have real conversations. Not major. They ain't all got to be major, but simple things. Because to everybody, just because you love somebody, is not enough reason to get married. I will go to my grave saying that, because that's love isn't love is not going to sustain a marriage. Love is simple. Love alone is not going to sustain a marriage. Doesn't mean that you don't love each other, but everybody that loves each other doesn't know. And I always wondered this, and I would never pose a question to you guys as the viewers or whatever. It's just a rhetorical question. I don't want any answers in the comments. But one of the things that I always ask myself is, how many people are actually with their so-called soulmate or the love of their life,
Right.
versus people that are in a loving marriage, but it's not the person deep down that you really want to be with.
Right.
That's a whole nother dichotomy. But you know what I'm saying? I know that I'm quite sure that there are people that exist like that there. It's just that you would never talk to your spouse about that. You know what I mean? Hey, what's good, man? But
your spouse is the person you hope in an ideal world, utopic world. Your spouse is the person who is your passion partner, your best friend, your counselor, your northern light. Your hopefully your spouse is all of that. But in the conversations that I've had, more often than not, your spouse is probably the best choice. Maybe not the spouse was the one that checked all the boxes.
Mhm.
Maybe they weren't 10s on everything, but it was a 5 here, a 4 there, a 7 here, a 3 there, but all the boxes got checked. So you decided to go there. And if that's the way you chose, then so be it. But I think that there's something to be said about a soulmate. And unfortunately there's that period of time where you're in that romantic love, that honeymoon phase. You probably think that's your soulmate, and then 2 years later you realize maybe not. But I do think that there are soulmates. I think that's how we find our best friends. That's how we find people across the room that you would have never been attracted to. There's people, I think that you can have that very magical attraction, but I think that a lot of times people settle for wherever it is. And I don't think always, I settle is a hard word, because I think a lot of people abuse the word settle. I don't want to settle for that.
Yeah.
You need to settle for something, but that's a whole different thing, but I just think that a lot of people do settle. And I think if we were permitted to find ourselves and choose, given more time to do that, I think that we would probably have healthier relationships and marriages.
And I think we need to normalize that when we say settle, we got to stop looking at that with a negative connotation. Because I agree with you on that. It's like, shout out to my girl Janelle, one of my homegirls. We talking, we have like real conversations a lot. And she's like, Mara, what's your definition of wife? And I'm like, I always keep it real with it. Like, for most men, I'm not speaking for nobody else out there, so men don't take this to heart. I'm just saying, for the most part, wifey is usually that one that, like you say, she checks all the boxes. She's a C on every level. She ain't the best sex partner you had. She might not be the finest you had. She might not be the funniest you had. You know, it's very rare that somebody chooses a wife that is perfect at everything, unless that's the only person that you've been in a relationship with. And vice versa with women. You know what I mean? Chances are you're not her best sex partner, but it doesn't mean that when we say we use the word settle, it doesn't mean that you dumb down or you lowered your standard, so to speak. It's just that, you know what, this fits right, because she might have been the finest ever, but do I really want to be with somebody for the rest of my life that takes an hour and a half to get dressed to go to the grocery store? Do I really want to be with somebody that we have good sex, but I can't tell a joke to? She don't understand my sense of humor. You know what I mean? So it's about that balance and understanding it. So settle is definitely not a negative word in this setting. You know what I mean? But I think that is important that people understand that. And at the same time, on the opposite end of that, if you're in that situation, stop having that fake war on yourself. Well, I know she thinking about him because he was better than me at this. Don't do that to yourself. Don't even torment yourself like that did. Be thankful that, you know what, she chose me. He chose me, and we're gonna make it ride out. She might have been good at this here, but I got the prize.
There's definitely something to be said about being content also. Like, I think the opposite end of settle is learn how to be content. Learn how to be happy with being content. And I think that's another, that's a whole another ball of wax that we could unravel on another day. Like people are just so discontent with everything, and with their choices, with people, with each other. And we have to learn how to just be more satisfied. But I don't think you can be more satisfied if you don't know who you are completely. You can't really be okay with being just with yourself if you haven't had the opportunity to just be with yourself and be satisfied within yourself. And so giving yourself that time to get to know yourself and to know what satisfies you, maybe you won't be so discontent in your marriage because you found a way to be self-soothing, So
Anti-woke says since no fault divorce in 1975, divorce rates have exploded, as have incarceration rates. Monty said there used to be structure to marriage. People got married for provision and security, so we stayed together because we needed each other outside of romance and love. And I think that was a big part of it too, but that's a whole nother thing. I'm not saying that women shouldn't have their own careers or whatnot there, but it was big different. I always say that's just my thing. A lot of times women are today standard, so to speak. I'm not speaking for all women, but for the most part, it's like, you want a man to treat you like grandma did, but you still want all your same freedoms at the same time. And you got to pick a battle. You got to pick a battle. It's hard. Like grandma, she didn't have no career, so it wasn't that she was necessarily stuck, but they stayed together for the sake of the marriage. You know what I mean? I always try to tell people, and again, like we said, I'm not saying that divorce is right, but it was different dichotomy, and we ain't got to be. I had a friend, his grandparents, they never divorced. I always thought they was divorced. They had never divorced. But you know why I thought they divorced? Because they was married and they lived in the same building, but they had two different apartments. But that's what worked for them. You know what I mean? So there's no rule book on what should work for people and whatnot. Bev said, life and relationships are forever evolving. It would be pure utopia if the courses align. I agree with that too. And that's one thing that a lot of people say, especially in church, as you grow together. Guess what? That's a beautiful thing when you grow together. But sometimes people grow apart, especially when you get married at an early age. You know what I mean? And one of my things I always harp on it too. Again, I believe in marriage, but I think far too many people get married, especially young. I'll say young people. I think far too many young people get married based off of potential, and that's problematic to me. You know what I mean? Because when you're young, oh yeah, I see him. He's going to school to be a doctor, or she's going to school to be a real estate agent, or look, yeah, we could build this great thing. But what if they get on drugs? What if the dream is a dream deferred? Are you still willing to love that person, to be with that person, and stick it out because they didn't become who you thought? You were marrying somebody based off of who you thought they would become, but they might change their mind. He might not want to be a doctor no more. Now he might just want to be a plumber or whatever. Are you still willing to be with that person when they change up, or if they change? So I think that's an important mindset that too. But before we go out, you had asked me at what point, when in dating, what point do you get introduced to the children? And that's I wasn't avoiding it. I think that's very pivotal too, because I think for me, it works both ways. It's tricky. It's a tricky thing, right? Because having said that, I already said I don't date women with younger children, right? Not say I won't date nobody with. I'm not saying I won't never date a woman with younger children. I just know that would be a God thing if God conditioned my heart, knowing how I feel. So you know what? I want to give this a try. Hey, let me meet little Spiky or little Tasha or whatever case be. But having said that, I do believe this. It turns me off if we just met and you introducing me to your children. In my mind, that's a problem. Because how many other people have you? Because mama got to have a life too. Ain't that what Jody mama say? And baby boy, mama got to have a life too. All right, but all right. Well, what number dude am I that you been brought around your child? I'm not gonna be no Uncle Marvin. I'm not with that. Because I'm gonna ask that kid, well, how many other uncles you got? You know what I'm saying? So I have met children. I have met women that with children. I've been out with women that have children, but I've never been to their house. We always going out to the movies. We go out to dinner, whatever the case may be. But no, you're not meeting my child. I like that. Because what me and you got ain't got nothing to do with me and your child. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not trying to be nobody's step-in father. I'm not trying to be no substitute for that. Because somewhere along the line, whether y'all get along or not, that child has a father.
Mm-hmm.
If they're still living.
Sure.
And the same way we talk about baby mama drama, I ain't doing no baby daddy drama. You know what I mean? I ain't even going down that road. Because as a father, I know how it is too. Like, I didn't want my sons to be around any and everybody. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how you ain't gonna be disciplining my child just because they live in your household. That's gonna be a real problem. you know what I mean? So it's a whole bunch of different dynamics. So I think that the best time for you to meet a child, or for me to meet a woman's child, so to speak, is when we know that we really want to take it to that next level and become serious about one another. You know what I mean? At that point, but I ain't talking no two weeks. I ain't even talking. I'm not really gonna put no time frame on it, but it ain't gonna be early. I ain't saying they got to be 6 months versus 6 years, but it ain't gonna be right up front. Because I am gonna look at you sideways as a woman if this is our second time going out, and you say, "Well, come on in and meet little." That might be one of our last dates. That's just me though, and I'm just being honest. I think I don't respect, especially if it's a girl. Especially if it's a girl, I think it's a little different, and I think that it should be unbiased. But I think it's different when you have daughters versus um, boys, because as a mother, what example are you setting for your daughter to be introducing her to all the, like anti what was saying earlier, 3 or 4 or 5 stepdads? That ain't cool. That ain't. But to each his own. But I just think that that's a bad look. You know what I mean? And I'm not judging you. You live. It's your life to live. You can live however you want to. I'm just saying, asking Monica a question and what works for me. Uh, yeah. Don't be trying to introduce me to your kids right away.
I'm very grateful that my kids are adults. Navigating dating with children is a very difficult thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I used to listen to Dr. Laura a long time ago, and she was kind of harsh, but at the same time, she said that she doesn't believe if you're not with the child's father or mother, she said don't date until your kids are grown. And at the time, this was 20, 30 years ago, I was like, wow, Dr. Laura is harsh. She's harsh. But I get it now, especially now that my children are grown. I get that. I'm glad I don't have to navigate that world anymore. I'm glad that is behind me, but it's very difficult to try to. It's hard enough to find the right person, but to find the right person who is also the right person for your children is, ugh, it's a nightmare.
Anti woke said, Monica, women are doing this. They are going from relationship to relationship, and still they are not happy. They also said, do you guys believe that life for black people in the USA has gotten better or worse for since 1975? We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. I know for me, um, I in certain aspects, I believe that it has gotten worse, um, because of financial freedoms and because of all these different things. We have more, so we have less time for one another, for the family dynamics. I said it earlier. I miss the old school. That 60s and 70s when it was harder, but you know we had more of a family dynamic. We had more solid family structures. People knew, I come from a big family, and it bothers me sometimes that my cousins, my children don't know their own cousins because they're so all over the place. We're actually putting together a family reunion for next year, and I hope everybody gets to attend. But that wasn't a thing back then. You didn't have to have family reunion because summertime, everybody's going to grandma's house. So I'm gonna see all my cousins down there at grandma's house during the summertime. Like, we had all these different isolations, take turns. It's like all the children went to grandma's house for either Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever the case may be. Now we so busy, we got our own things going on. So it's like that has been lost. That unity, that family unity has been lost in my opinion. So I prefer the older way of life. What about you, Monica?
I do too. I mean, I wasn't raising a family in 1975. I was being raised in 75. So I don't know if it was easier or whatever, but I just know that during the years that I've been here, 50 some years that I've been here, I think that it has gotten harder. I think that even though we've had a black president, and I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is kind of cracking. Even though we've had a black president, and I think we've made a lot of strides, we are not. We've lost the sense of family. We've bit off our nose to spite our face, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We've gained riches and we've lost the true wealth, and that is family. I think that you know I know that it's popular for women to be Instagram models, and I know that it's popular for. There's a lot of things that the world is presenting to young women and young men today. I'm so grateful that my kids are adults already because I would not want to go up against the concept of you having to alter your body in order to be enough, or black men that only want to date you if you're the color of this side of my palm instead of this side of my palm. Like, it's just, there's so many battles that we have with ourselves. And this is what we were talking about earlier. So yes, I do believe it was easier maybe in 75 or 65 or 85, but I definitely know that here right now in 2026, we are battling ourselves. And if until we get ourselves together, until we really understand who we are and get our between our ears together, our physical bodies together, our diets together, our minds together, we're not ready to partner up with anybody. And I believe that once we do get our bodies and minds and all of that stuff together and we do partner up with each other, we also have to make sure that we have the right influences and the right people around us who can keep encouraging us so that we can keep realistic expectations of what marriage really truly is. I'm not coming from a state of not being married. I don't hate marriage. I love marriage, but I have a realistic experience of what marriage truly is. And so, what was it? I'm not a theologian. Was it Peter that said better to be single than to be with somebody else? I don't know. I think it was Peter in the Bible.
Better to marry than to burn.
Yeah. So, I think it's better to be single than to be in a toxic situation. And I think it's better to be single than to subject myself to just being married for the sake of whatever, sin I'm concerned about. But no, I don't want that for us in 2026. I just think that we have to heal ourselves from the inside out. And I don't know if it's up to the older generation to start talking to the younger people about it, but I like having these kind of conversations. I hope that younger people are listening, because I hate seeing a panel of male, female, or man, woman, and all they're doing is battling because they're like, well, you got to do this, and you should take me to this restaurant, and well, you got to make my dinner, and that is horrible. Like, that's not marriage. That is not what marriage looks like. Marriage is not about what you have to do. It really is an exercise of waking up every single morning, figuring out how you can be a blessing to the other person, and while also honoring your own self. And that is a hard thing to navigate. That's a hard thing to navigate.
You're 1,000% right on that. Because I mean, personally, I know, and especially in today's age where we, with the podcasting and whatnot, it's like, that's all you see. I don't even click on them. I don't watch the Pop to My Balloon. I don't watch none of them panels with all that there. Because like you say, and then it's like they get in, like you said, there's a battle to see who can get the best sound bites and who can go viral for their advice and all that there. But you got to remember, at the end of the day, that's just one person's perspective. These people don't know either. And half the time, these people on these panels, they ain't married either. So they're speaking from a single. So who are you to be telling me about what marriage looks like?
But
and you've never been married before.
Are listening to. This is who our children are listening to.
Exactly.
So I think that even though it's one person's opinion, one turns into 10 and 10 to 20 and 100 and 1,000, that if anything that you hear repetitively becomes truth, even if it's not, so I think that our young people are hearing this. And I'm hearing young people say, I'm hearing them because I have them. I have young people, but they're saying they don't even want to get married. They don't even want to have children. They don't even care about that. And that breaks my heart, because I feel like you should desire companionship. Not everybody, it's not for everybody, but you should desire a relationship. But these young people really don't know anything beyond just the hookup, and that's it. They have no sense of like how to truly connect. And that's, we can sit here for a whole nother 3 hours talking about that, but I think it's very, we're in a dangerous state with our young people. And as Black people, it depends on what you believe about us. Do you believe that we are indigenous people? Do you believe that we are the original people? Do you believe that we are God's people? If you believe that, then we have a real responsibility to recreate and try to rebirth who we are, because our young people are on a very dangerous, slippery slope to extinction. That's
Mhm.
what I truly believe.
Yeah. I think that's profound. One of the premises of this whole show is I always say, and I haven't said it in a while, but I usually always say like everything in life is predicated upon what you believe. That's where everything starts with what you believe. Whether when it comes to faith, whether you Christian, whether you Islam, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're atheist, everything is based off of what you believe. However, even though you believe something does not necessarily mean that it's true. It's just what you believe. We
Right,
always got to remember that.
right,
So that's why it's important for us to have different, even when the Bible talks about let us come together and reason. I think that you need a woman at the table. You need a man at the table. You need a child at the table, because if a whole bunch of like-minded people are having a conversation together, you're not going to get any resolution. You need somebody from different demographics, a poor, a rich. You know what I mean? That way we can find some kind of commonality amongst ourselves, and I think that's very key. Anti-woke said, "Who benefits from divorce? Mostly white lawyers, judges, and the corporations who own the privately owned jails." I absolutely agree with that. He said, "Nobody looks down on women who have 4 or 5 stepdads. That's the problem." Monty said, "You have to wake up and choose the person every day." Um, Reading that comment from Anti-Woke, that made me think about something, Monica. And I want to reverse, before we get out of here, I want to reverse the question on you too, as far as when do you introduce your, this is for not for you per se, but for young women that's out there watching, as opposed to when do they, you think they should introduce a child to their significant other or the man that they're dating, whatever case may be. But no, nobody, he said nobody looks down on women who have 4 or 5 stepdads, and that's the problem. I kind of agree with that. I'm not saying that he's right or wrong, but I kind of agree with that statement. But from a woman perspective, how do you think that would have made you feel, or how would you think that have shaped you differently if you had to sing your mind with 4 or 5 different partners?
um, wow, that's a tough question because my mom was single um, for the majority of me growing up. So I did see her dating um, people of significance. Did not really get too much time in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say that it damaged me per se. I mean, my mom was single. I can't say that it had a huge impact on me. I just know that the person who could have been there, my biological father, was not. So my stepdad that I mentioned earlier, who did step in, they dated when I was a little girl, broke up, and then got back together when I was in my late teens. Um, he was awesome. He was great. He was the one I made Father's Day cards for when I was in third grade. He was um, he was that dude, and I'm grateful for him that he didn't mind being in that role, didn't mind picking me up from school, didn't mind when I made him stuff and hanging it on the refrigerator, didn't mind, letting me hang out with him while he was playing his saxophone. He spent time with me, and later when I got older and I needed my grass cut, he would come to my house and cut my grass and check my oil and clean off my window shield. He was the man in my life that I recognize as being an influence to me. So had my mom had many people like that, I would have been very very confused. And some of the people that she did date along the way, um, I wouldn't have wanted them in my life anyways. I wouldn't have wanted that person. There was really only one person who I appreciated and enjoyed having in my life outside of yearning for that one person who was my biological dad. And my stepdad was a good dude. He stepped up to the plate. He was a good grandpa. He was a good father and a good partner to my mom. Maybe it wasn't the partner she needed, and that's why I say kids don't really understand from an adult perspective what's going on. You know, I don't know if he was. My dog is really out of control right now. I don't know if he was the partner my mother needed, but he was definitely the male influence. He was a safe place to land. And so moms and dads don't have to be identical in the way that they influence children. But I do believe that dads have a role, even though it may be different. They may not be as hands on, they may not be as sensitive, but the role of dad to just cut the grass, check the oil, you know, be kind, be a soft place to land, that's an important role for a daughter as well. And, you know, I'm not mad at my mom for dating. I'm not mad at her for dating. I would hope that my children would not be mad at me for dating either, seeking a partner, because I was on a journey for a long time of having a life partner. But now that that's not as important to me anymore, I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? You know, like it I just think that you don't know what you don't know when you don't know it. When you're 20, 30, and you're trying to figure out who you are and you're trying to check all the boxes yourself in your own life, you don't understand, you don't maybe have the grace that you would normally give yourself. You do all these things to try to do the right things, you know. Some people enroll in forever college because they feel like they've got to have 6 degrees. Some people, maybe you do for whatever it is you're doing. And maybe you just are not ready to face life. You know, maybe you just hide out in school. I'm not saying that's what they're always doing.
Yeah.
Every decision that we make that may seem weird to somebody else, I like to give people a lot of grace and forgiveness and say that they were probably just doing what they felt was best at the time. And based off of the knowledge that I had, the resources that I had, my mom grew up in a 2-parent household. Remember, I said that. She had her biological father and her biological mother in the household. She still grew up to be a woman of divorce. And she still grew up, you know, had a daughter that was raised in a divorced household. And so can I blame my mother for my divorce? No, because I could easily say, well, like my grandmother had a long lasting marriage, you know. So I think we just do the best we can with the tools that we have. And if I could speak to a young woman today, I would just say, especially when it comes to introducing somebody to your children, just be sure that that person is good to you first. Give yourself enough time. Enough time is really 2 whole, you know, circles around the earth, I believe, 2 years, to get to know that person and find out if that person is good to you. And if that person is good to you, then they'll probably be good to your children. But I also believe that you have to see how that person is around your kids, because he could be wonderful to you. He could wine and dine you. And the minute little Johnny comes around, he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, I wasn't ready for all that. So, you know, I say 2 years, but then, you know, it could be 6 months. I just think you have to know that this person is going to be significantly good to you, or believe that that is the case. We don't know anything. You know, we don't know how anything's going to turn out. But at least try to get that information before introducing your children to the roller coaster that is dating.
And the only thing I would add to that is I think that it's very important to take that into consideration, because you got to look at it from this dynamic too. You guys get together, you introduce him to the guy, they get along good, you get along good, but then all of a sudden something goes wrong with your relationship. Now you done festered this relationship. Now he has a relationship with the child, and now the child don't understand, well, why, since y'all didn't work out, why you got to leave out of my life? And that could be awkward as you move on. So that's something also to be taken consideration too, because it doesn't just affect you. You know, it's definitely going to affect that child as well. I've seen that happen in certain situations with some of my friends. It's like, kid love them, but it ain't work out with me and mom. Now I got to I'm not just divorcing you. I'm not moving on from you. I got to, and it's an awkward position that I would never want to be in. But we gonna get up out of here because we've been going on. I definitely got to have you back, Monica. My anti-woke said it's time for honest conversation about divorce. The truth is, divorce is devastating for children. Absolutely, absolutely. Anything is loss of life. It is devastating
Loss.
for children. Yeah, period.
Right.
yeah,
Loss is devastating for children. Yes.
yeah. So it's not just the divorce or the any loss from a child's aspect is going to be devastating, but doesn't mean that you can't heal from it. Doesn't mean that you can't grow from it either. You know, we don't want to normalize that as well. But again, we don't want to normalize people just because of tradition, because that's what we believe, or that's what we was programmed to believe, that it's best to stay married, because that might not be the situation either. Then you wonder why they grow up and get married and they divorce, even though y'all never divorced. They grow up and get divorced because they ain't willing to put up with it. I think Monty said it best when he's, a little while ago when he said it. You have to wake up every day and choose that person every single day. You know what I mean? So that's very important, man. But I want to thank all y'all for tuning in. Monica, I want to thank you for being with us. Like I said, I definitely got to get you back on. We can chop it up on many different things. But I appreciate you so much. How can they get in touch with you? Anybody that's in the North Carolina area, they looking for real estate. Because I definitely want to do a show on that too. Well, I want to have you back on that. The importance of owning your own home, all that kind of good stuff. But how can the people contact you?
Our website is mhomesgroup.com, and my phone number is 919-907-9906. Call or reach out or find me on Facebook.
All right. And that on Facebook is Monica Boswell. Y'all see the name at the bottom on the ticker. But I appreciate you. Did you have anything that you wanted to add before we got up out of here?
Thank you for this conversation. Thank you to your people who called in and commented. I just think that having a conversation of a lot of different people about a lot of different things is so healthy. So thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
I got to thank you for that comment there. Anti-woke. I'm about to screenshot it real quick, because we're gonna talk about that on another episode. I definitely want to get into that. Where's my camera at? I'm not computer savvy, so I don't know how to do a screenshot from my actual computer. There you go. But anti-woke said the feminist movement is all about what is best for women. If the woman wants to get pregnant and is not convenient, just get an abortion. If you're not happy with your relationship, just get divorced. Women who think that women who think that only allowing their kids to see their father 2 days out of 14 days is no big deal is deluded. All right, yeah. So I definitely had to get that. We're gonna get that on another episode. But I would definitely want to let Monica get up out of here, because we going on 2.5 hours. Don't even seem like it. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Everybody stay hydrated this upcoming week, no matter where you're at. I see it's gonna be hot temperatures in Jersey. It's gonna be hot temperatures down here in North Carolina, West Coast, Midwest. So everybody stay hydrated, stay cool as possible. I appreciate you guys. In the middle of next week we'll be here. I'm trying to do the anniversary show on the 9th. On the 7th, I will let you guys know how that goes, how that work out as far as scheduling and whatnot. But I'll keep you guys posted on that as well. But I want to appreciate everybody. I want to thank everybody for taking out the time to be a part of this. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Monica, thanks again. I appreciate you. And I'm going to definitely have you back on if you want to come back on. It was a good conversating with you. But as usual, when we get up out of here, again, men's mental health, it might be over for the month of June, but it doesn't stop. You need to be concerned about yourself, your mental health, your emotions every single day. Get the help that you needed. Talk to somebody. Find your support group, people that you can rely on, and that they're there for you, and take advantage of it. This is not a negative way of saying when you're using people. If you want to use people, use them in a positive way in that fashion, not for different things. Thanks, Linda. I appreciate you, man. If you don't mind, please subscribe to the channel. We on every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock live, different topics, what have you. Belinda said, awesome discussion. Really enjoyed it. And I appreciate you. I enjoyed you being a part of it in the comments as well. I appreciate you guys because, like I said, without the comments from you guys, that is the show. That you guys are off camera, but you are just as much as a part of the show as we are. So I appreciate each and every one of you all. You guys stay safe. And as usual, in signing off, no, I was about to say that, but before I sign off, make sure that you check on someone this week, somebody that you haven't talked to in a while. Just call them, let them know that you was thinking about them. Text them, just check on everybody that's in your circle. Somebody that not somebody that you talk to every day, but somebody that's random, because you never know what it means to that person or that individual. So reach out to somebody that you haven't talked to in a while. Just let them know that they matter and that they're here for you. That's a way that we can all contribute to our healing our community as well. But having said that, and usual signing off, DeAndre and Lysa, know that Daddy loves you intentionally, but I also love you unconditionally. Till next week, peace.